All right, everybody, welcome back. We are going to go ahead and start. Our couple quick reminders. If you are here and you need certificate of attendance to prove faculty development, please message me in the chat your name and email address, and I will send that out at the end of the day. If you are just joining us, if you can remember to have your camera off and your microphone muted, that would be fantastic. So our next presenter of the day is Christoph Korner, who is here to present on Unbuilding Walls. So a little bit about Christoph. He's earned his architecture degree and urban design from the Technical University in Braunschweig, Germany, which I'm sure I said that wrong. So Christoph, you'll have to correct me. And an MArch from UCLA with an emphasis on history and theory. Since then, he's been part of Graft, an award-winning design firm with offices in LA, Berlin, and Beijing. Projects range from master planning, urban design, architecture, interior design, exhibition design, to product design. In addition, his work has been exhibited and published on several occasions, and he authored articles and books. In recent years, his dedication gravitated increasingly towards teaching and academia, culminating in his current position as professor of interior design at Woodbury University in LA. So with that, I'm going to stop my share and turn it over to you, Christoph.
Thank you so much. Let me share my screen. All right. I hope everybody can see this beautifully. Thank you for the wonderful day so far. I've learned a lot. It was really interesting presentations. Now we're shifting gear a little bit away from AI. Well, not quite, actually, you'll see in a little bit, but away from academia, I wanted to show you today a project that I did with my firm Graft. Like was already mentioned, we have offices in Los Angeles, Berlin, and Beijing, and this is a project that was mostly done from our Berlin office, with my support also, and so I got to spend some time there. We were invited, there was a competition, and we were chosen to curate and design the German pavilion for the architecture biennial in Venice, Italy, which is a great location, of course, but also a very historically loaded location. The German pavilion that you see here was actually built during the Nazi era also. And what we decided to do for this project was to look at the Berlin Wall as an example for a wall that was built and then later on unbuilt. It was built in 1961, the Berlin Wall, and then it came down in 1989, 1990. And just want to spend very short amount of time on telling you about the history that led to this in order for you to understand the design a little bit better also. So this is a picture of Berlin, Potsdamer Platz, one of the central squares in Berlin. Before the Second World War, it was a typical European metropolis, old building. Well, back then they were not that old, but turn of the century buildings, a lot, 4 or 5 stories tall, a lot of traffic, vivid life. But then during the Second World War, the city was destroyed by over 80%. So very few buildings were actually still standing. Large parts of the city were destroyed. And of course, there was then the discussion after the Second World War, how should we rebuild? What should be rebuilt? I don't want to get into that discussion. It's a very interesting discussion that happened there also. There's the Brandenburg Gate at the center of Berlin. So you can see the extent of the destruction there. Now, after the Second World War, Germany was first separated into 4 sectors. Each sector was under the control of one of the winning powers, Great Britain, France, United States, and the Soviet Union. And then you see at the top right, the little island there within the Soviet controlled area was Berlin. And Berlin, the city itself, was also again separated into 4 different sectors. In 1949, then, the 3 Western sectors, or what we would call now Western sectors, were reunited into the German Republic, while the eastern part stood its own state as the FDR there. Berlin itself also, again, was split into two separate areas. So there was part of the entire Iron Curtain that was then separating Eastern Europe from Western Europe, or the Eastern Bloc from the Western Bloc, the NATO from the Warsaw Pact, and all of these different things. So this red line is this gigantic, long kind of wall was running throughout Europe, which is actually now you can hike there. It's a long, long, long hiking path. I have no idea how long it takes, but I'm not going to try too much walking. But so during that time, there was the actual physical manifestation of this Iron Curtain, the wall in Germany, running through the entire country, but also then running around that new island of West Berlin that was situated in the center of the Soviet sector there. There were very few entrances and exits, actually. Only the checkpoint Bravo and checkpoint Charlie were there, apart from airports and so on, of course. The Berlin Wall itself that you see here had a total length of 96 miles, so a pretty long, substantial road. It was built in 1961 by East Germany. The official version was in order to keep infiltrators from the West from entering the East. In reality, it was to keep the citizens from East Germany and East Berlin from finding refuge in West Berlin. So the wall was really built straight through the city with these, like I said, these two checkpoints, two borders, or two border points, checkpoint Charlie, checkpoint Bravo. And it ran through the middle of streets. If you lived on the right side of the street, you might end up in East Berlin, on the left side of the street in West Berlin, or the other way around. So a very brutal separation of the city. Some buildings were torn down also along the border to make room for the wall that was built. And sometimes a building itself would become the wall by just closing off the windows and emptying out the building also. Of course, nobody was living there anymore. And then in other areas, it became really more of a double wall with a death zone in between. So you see that here, close to the center of Berlin, an area where actually you see that kind of octagon at the center. That's the Leipziger Platz, which is rebuilt now also. But just an empty zone. There was minefields and very bad situation there. A lot of people died there trying to cross the border. Fast forward to 1989. So here's the wall at that time, and you kind of see this completely desolate zone also around it in the background. Then in 1989, without again going into too many details of the policies, the wall fell. The wall was opened. The checkpoints were opened. Big celebration, of course, for all Germans. I remember my parents calling me in the middle of the night and just freaking out, like, oh my God, the border's open, and they just raced to the border. And I went the next day, and with my friends, the first thing we actually did is we drove to Dessau, to the Bauhaus, to see that with our own eyes for the first time, which was amazing. And then the wall was dismantled, and you see that's going to become important also for the design I'm going to show you in a minute. The wall itself was made out of pre-cast concrete sections. And here, section by section was removed by cranes, and actually now most of the wall has been removed. There's a few pieces that are left in two different places in Berlin now. So we decided to make that kind of not the theme maybe of the pavilion. The theme of the pavilion is walls in general, walls as separators, but then also the unbuilding of the walls in order to bring worlds back together. We wanted to kind of look at that specifically in Berlin, but then also in Germany, and then also in a much larger global scale. So this is the pavilion from the inside, and the question was, how do we do that? What do we do? First of all, we wanted to make it not just information-based, but we also wanted to make it experiential. We wanted people to experience the idea of the building of a wall and the unbuilding of the wall. And we also wanted to look at it in a more global way. So we worked on the design concept. tried to develop an idea that would work with this in mind. So we decided to put a wall throughout the building, brutally clear wall, but then to start cutting it into segments like the Berlin Wall was built and pulling them apart, pulling some of them back, but in a way that works as an anamorphic effect. So when you walk in, you actually do see, for this anamorphic effect, that's where we used machine learning, AI, in order to optimize this kind of effect. The effect that when you walk in, you see a clear wall in front of you, but when you start walking around in the space, you start seeing the wall disintegrating, disappearing, becoming parts and segments. So many different iterations, many different parameters were worked with, testing to see the areas of visibility from the entrance, but then also from other points when you walk into the space there. So that was a fun process, very interesting for us. And here you can see one of the earlier walkthroughs. So this is what you see when you enter, really this black wall, and then it starts disintegrating. There's another rendering. So this is the moment you enter, you see the wall, and then you start walking around, and the wall starts disintegrating. You enter the wall, walk into these areas. Then the actual exhibition is at the back of all of these panels. It's an exhibition primarily of architecture that deals somehow with the border situation. The exhibition itself then is separated into two parts: the entrance area, where you see the wall, and there's also a wall of opinions. I'm going to talk about in a little bit what that means. And then the exhibition behind the wall, or as part of the wall, you might say. Another rendering gives you more of a vision there. And then this is actually not a rendering. This is actually a photo of the installed exhibition. Still looks pretty much like the rendering though. And here a photo now of the exhibition. So when you enter, this is what you see. You see the wall, and the interactivity is not by creating some kind of high-tech process there, but really just by you starting to move around. When you move closer, you start seeing, oh, there's something going on. There's actually maybe depth included. And then when you start walking around more, you see how the wall starts to be unbuilt and starts to fragment and be put into segments there. So very, I think, very successful interactive effect. And then on the back of the panels, you see the actual exhibited items, buildings. Okay, so here, that was actually during installation. Those are my partners from the office sitting there and hanging out. And then a couple of photos from the installation itself, and then walking around. That's when you discover the actual projects. The projects were, like I said, all different architectural designs that were dealing with the border situation along the German border, but then also along the Berlin border between East Berlin and West Berlin. So many different things, Checkpoint Charlie, but also cultural important things. So for example, after the wall came down, that's also when I moved to Berlin, right around that time. One of the super exciting things was all of these pop-up illegal underground clubs in that former death zone of the wall, like Eberg, Tresor, all hardcore techno clubs, fantastic music there. It was really, really fun. The Tacheles, which was a club and exhibition space and artist space that was just occupied by the artists, and it was a former department store. And you can see, on the bottom right, that's basically the space, how it worked, how it functioned. The main club was in the basement, and you had to enter through a crack or a big hole in the wall. It was very exciting, very hard to find if you didn't know where it was. There was no signage, of course. It was also not ADA approved, I might say. So yeah, all of these parties, festivals there. Was really fun. But then also we also showed more, the serious architecture, like Project Barem Kohlhaas that was built there. The Axel Springer, it's a publishing house for newspaper and magazine. in Germany. So it's one of the projects that's finished now, that was in the former death strip. So you see on the top right picture, that's the location where it was built within the former wall area, next to actually a very important building from the 60s, which was the publishing house also. Then also another project was the actual Berlin Wall Museum, where part of the wall actually still exists. So if you visit Berlin, I would recommend going there. You can walk along the wall, which by now actually has to be restored because the concrete is disintegrating. But it's a little park with the wall, and then some buildings like this little church that was built at the location where a former church was destroyed in order to make room for the wall. So there's Christian chapel there, but also a museum building next to it where you can go and get information about the wall. And you can see at the bottom right how the wall is actually disintegrating now. And there have been a lot of discussions. Should it actually just gracefully age and disappear over time now, or should it be restored? Still going on a little bit, that discussion. And actually the entire German parliament is built in this death sector, also in this death strip, including the house of the chancellor, office buildings and everything. So very, very large project there that you can see with the offices of the parliament. That's the chancellor, the German chancellor's house. Then also other places like talking about Unbuilding again, there were entire villages that were destroyed to make room for that wall. So also talking about that in the exhibition, showing examples of that, of people being moved from the location there. But then we also, like I said, looked at it in a much more global aspect to look at other walls, the walls going through separating Northern Ireland and Ireland, and Northern Cyprus and Cyprus, the Spanish parts of Morocco, Ceuta, but also, which is of course very unfortunately a very timely topic right now, the wall separating the Gaza Strip from Israel. So we looked at those walls also in a different way, not with architecture exhibition, but with what we call the through video installations along this along the entrance wall. We had sent a team to these different places to interview people, always on both sides of the wall, and always people that are in support of the wall or that are against the wall also. So we wanted to really try to keep a neutral stand there about this, or show all different sides and opinions. You can imagine, of course, that depending on where you go, you will get very, very different opinions about that. So those are, you can see on the left, those were full-scale video project or TV screens there with the people talking about the wall and the ideas of the wall. Then we had actually placed mirrors on both ends of the space, so our wall would endlessly continue actually. And even though just one segment, of course, is built there, then you could sit there and listen to the people talking about their support of the wall or their opposition to the wall. And so, like I said, we went to different places. This is the wall in Cyprus that still exists, of course. This is the wall in Ireland, in Belfast. At the bottom, the top one, I am not sure. I think that is Ceuta, if I remember correctly. So Spain, Morocco. The top again, Korea, South Korea, North Korea, also at the bottom. Another one we looked at. And this is actually then the border in Tijuana and San Diego. So we also went there, interviewed people. It was very interesting to talk to people there, of course. And like I said, we made sure there was all different opinions present. I'm not going to play that now. So that's the video from our location here in California. But yeah, so that was our project. It was very interesting to work on this, very fun, very successful, I think, also in the end. And I am happy to answer any questions you might have. Let me maybe stop.
Thank you so
sharing.
much. Did someone have questions?
If you're interested in those videos, you can just type Unbuilding Walls German Pavilion in Vimeo. They're all there. There's also one that actually was shot at the Gaza Strip.
Thank you. So if anyone does have questions, here's Christoph's contact information and name. You can always reach out to him after the session is over. I'm not seeing any new questions come up in the chat. So with that, we'll go ahead and pause, and our next presentation will start in 9 minutes. Thank you, Christoph.
Thank you.